Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about the huge changes, in my humble opinion, that are being prompted by flea mortals becoming Dungeons and Dragons canon. I need to say this at the beginning and at the end. I always say it at the end, but I need to say this at the beginning. The ramifications of what I'm talking about are so significant. The changes that are being prompted from what I see are so mammoth that I have to remind you, every single word you're about to hear is nothing but my humble opinion. Every single word in this video is nothing but my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay? Let's go. Okay. So flee more. I'll tell you what I believe, and then I'm gonna walk you to how I came to that conclusion. Okay? I believe that flea mortals, Matthew Colville's brilliant monster manual, being put into D&D partnered content, making it D&D canon, in my humble opinion. And I'll tell you exactly how that happened. Declares that every single OSR game and every single indie tabletop role-playing game, every single OSR tabletop role-playing game, and every single indie tabletop role-playing game that uses the term Game Master now is canon to Dungeons and Dragons. I know, it is shocking. It is shocking. You're 100% right. It is shocking. It is shocking, all right? Because the ramifications of that are huge. They're absolutely massive. They are absolutely massive. Okay? All right, so how do we get here? Okay, so first of all, realize what happened with Matthew Colville. Matthew Colville gets uppity and he's like, those D&D guys don't know how to write a monster manual. I'll write a monster manual. Read the forward on it. On D&D Beyond, the forward on D&D Beyond to Flea Mortals says, we were going to call this Better Monsters, right? And Matthew Colville's like, we can write better monsters than Dungeons and Dragons. Now, what's interesting is he didn't succeed in writing better monsters than Dungeons and Dragons. He succeeded in writing a bunch of monsters that then became D&D canon. How now? You're saying, Scott, why do you think that the D&D partner content is D&D canon? Well, first of all, it's right there. If you go to D&D Beyond and you do sources, show all sources, it shows you every canon D&D book. Everything listed there is D&D canon, in my humble opinion. And you're like, well, wait. It does have the partnered content label. Yes, it does. And what's in that grouping? Exandria, Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. That is a D&D canon hardback with the red ampersand distributed through FLGSs, just like every other. Literally has the same spine, same back. Nothing is different. D&D canon to the dot, to D&D canon to the very last tittle. Okay? You understand that? D&D partner content is D&D canon. The Explorer's Guide to Wildmount proves that, in my humble opinion. Okay, all right. So, why is every OSR game, a tabletop role-playing game, and every indie tabletop role-playing game that ever used the term Game Master canon to D&D now? Oh, let me explain it. Because when they brought over Flea Mortals, Flea Mortals does not use DM. It doesn't use Dungeon Master. It uses GM, Game Master. That means for the first time in 5 decades of history, right, that we are looking at in 5 decades of history, we're looking at Game Master being canon to Dungeons & Dragons. Dungeons & Dragons now has Game Masters and Dungeon Masters. Now, this is important because back after 1986, Gary Gygax wrote a bunch of books that, frankly, I don't think are very important because, well, actually, and I'm going to have to reread them now, right, because things changed, right? Gary was like, I can't tell you how to be a Dungeon Master anymore because I'm not with TSR. I'm not, I gave Lorraine Williams the task of carrying D&D forward because I lost control of myself, right? That's really what he did, in my own opinion. He got a very bad habit when he went to Hollywood and lost complete control of himself, and knew that he had lost control of himself, and handed the entire kit and caboodle, handpicked Lorraine Williams to fix every problem he had created with his very bad habit. And she did. She built Dungeons and Dragons into a brick house, and every brick's made of gold, right? Like, I'm really hoping somebody's going to write a true history of Lorraine Williams, because I'll tell you right now, one hasn't been written yet. That's for sure. There's a lot of hit jobs by faux academics who really, are out there castigating her legacy, which is abominable in my own opinion. Worst of them is Ben Grimm's. I can't call Ben Grimm a faux academic. I think he's an actual academic who just had an outrageously misogynistic view of history and really did a terrible, terrible job of representing Lorraine Williams' actual performance at TSR. I think what he did is abominable. And when you read Slaying the Dragon, I think the dragon he thinks he's slaying is Lorraine Williams. Sorry, let me stay super focused. Sorry. Okay, here we go. So, Flea Mortals directly introduces the term Game Master into Dungeons & Dragons as a canon term. That means that every book, in my humble opinion, that has ever used the term Game Master is now Dungeons & Dragons canon. Okay? Now, this is not every tabletop role-playing game, right? One of the best tabletop role-playing games out right now is Marvel Multiverse RPG. It uses the term narrator. You will not find the term Game Master anywhere in it. All right? Get this. Actually, holy cows. Oh my gosh. Wow, I'm sorry. You have to understand something. The legacy of Dungeons & Dragons is astounding. Literally, Dungeons & Dragons has put objects into space. It's like, look it up. It's astounding. It's where I got articles. I got videos right here on my channel about it. The legacy of Dungeons & Dragons is 5 decades old. It is phenomenal and unbreakable and peerless, right? The momentum of Dungeons & Dragons is not humanly possible to understand fully. I struggle every day, and I am farther out on understanding exactly what Dungeons & Dragons is than anyone on the planet. I know more about the momentum of Dungeons & Dragons than literal Hasbro suits, right? And the designers and anybody else. And the reason why is I'm telling you, the momentum of Dungeons & Dragons, things are happening so fast that nobody understands what's actually happening, right? And you're like, wait a second, Scott, this is outrageous. You're saying that, that content that belongs to other people now is canon to Dungeons & Dragons. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. You're like, well, Scott, that's outrageous. We got laws that stop that, man. Yeah, do you understand what happened with Lord of the Rings? Gary Gygax was like, hey, everybody, here's Dungeons & Dragons. Hobbit's listed right in it. Do I have the legal right to tell you that a Hobbit's in Dungeons & Dragons? Absolutely not. I'm breaking the law right now. Welcome to 1974, right? And I'm going to have to pull this out of the book in a couple years, and because the Tolkien estate will realize what I'm doing, and this will be highly illegal, and this is a breaking of the law, right? Like, this is read it for yourself, right? Like, what I'm saying is history, right? And then you're like, yeah, Scott, they took it out, it was owned by the Tolkien estate, so you can't just say that Lord of the Rings is canon to D&D. What are they doing right now? We're literally about to get the book. They've already announced it. They've already announced that the criminally crafted, right, D&D version that came out in 1974 that directly listed loader intellectual property is going to be reprinted by Hasbro, by Wizards of the Coast, and presented fully in a fully playable, functioning version this year, right? Do you understand that? Right? What I'm saying, you're like, oh, Scott, you can't just say that, legally owned intellectual properties are now canon to D&D, right? It's already happened once. This is just the second time it's happening, right? And again, it's pretty astonishing because nobody even sees what's happening. There's so much content coming out. I'm not sure anybody has read all of it, right? And it's kind of like my channel. I'm positive. I'm the only person on the planet that's ever seen all of my content. Right? And I only saw it because I literally made it, right? So I was there when it was made. I saw the original cut, right? Now, I don't think there's a single person on the planet who's seen all 8,000 videos I've made. Not one. And D&D is the same boat, right? Like, you're like, Scott, this is an outrageous statement, right? Yeah, you're exactly right. In my humble opinion, what's happening is outrageous, right? And it is incredible to think that, and get this. So if you, like, let's say that, and I think literally every tabletop role-playing game ever created, with maybe 1% exception, might be canon to D&D now, right? Because they all use this term that is now canon to Dungeons & Dragons, right? And Game Master, right? And it's saying, hey, you know, and anything with Game Master in it, it's canon to us. I'm not saying it's owned by them. I'm saying it's canon, right? I'm not saying it's compatible. I'm saying it's canon, right? And the ramifications of that are massive, absolutely massive, especially in a multiverse world, right? Where everybody's using this multiverse term. The ramifications of this are astounding, right? So they use this game, and then, so what about Marvel Multiverse role-playing game, where it's like, hey, everybody, we use the term narrator, which is equivalent to Game Master. So even if you dodged it, and you said we use the term narrator, but you said it's equivalent to Game Master, your game becomes canon to D&D. I now believe that what is happening with D&D canon is unprecedented on any intellectual property in the history of humanity. And that Gary Gygax, through current Hasbro actions, through our current Hasbro publication, has essentially canonized every tabletop role-playing game that ever used the word Game Master as canon to their books. In addition to that, it actually now attaches, in my humble opinion, this is astonishing, listen to this, the books that Gary wrote after he left that had to use the term Game Master because he could not make canon content for Dungeon Masters, they've already said that Game Master equals Dungeon Master. Dungeon Master is canon to D&D, Game Master is canon to D&D because of Matt Colville's Flea Mortals, which was printed as it was originally published and did not have the term changed to DM. It has the term Game Master. That canonized that book, and every book that ever used the term Game Master is now canon to Dungeons & Dragons, in my humble opinion. The ramifications of this are staggering, in my humble opinion. Every single word you just heard in this video was my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking, subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.